everyone, I'm Bria and today we are doing the mid-year book tag. I love doing this video because I feel like it really motivates me to get back on track, as well as it just lets me reflect on my reading for the year. I pulled all these questions from Books and Lala's tag. I know she kind of adds some of her own questions in there, but I will just be following her format. So let's just go ahead and jump into the questions. And the first question is, how is your reading year going so far? And have you ever been in a situation where someone asks you a question that is perfectly fine, but because of what your answer is going to be, the question seems confrontational? And you know, I really don't want to put my business out there like that to tell you guys how few books I've read this year, but you know, we're friends. We're here to be transparent, but I'm gonna make you do a little bit of math because I also just am a little ashamed. My goal for this year was to read 53 books. Just know that I'm 11 books behind. As far as quality goes, I feel like I'm right in the middle. I've had a few books that have been really good, but for the most part, a lot of the books that I've read this year have just been kind of like okay. There haven't been many that have blown my mind, but I'm hoping that the more books I read in the coming months, that changes for me. And so quickly moving past that question, the second question is the best book you've read so far in 2024. And there are two books that are hard for me to choose from for this one. The first one is Monstrilio and the second one is The Rage of Dragons. Both of these books had me in my feels in different ways. I feel like I cared about a lot of the characters in both of these books. I feel like this one had me reflecting on things a little bit more, but I really enjoyed this. I feel like it was beautifully written and it really just kind of covered grief and how that affects people differently. And the fact that this is a horror book and was able to do all of that just really talks to the quality and the specialness of this book. And then for The Rage of Dragons, I like action in books, but this book had so much fighting in it that at first I was like, whoa, what's happening? But I actually loved that they were just beefing it up, okay? That they were nonstop fighting in this book, and the way that the fighting was able to progress the story forward, I really enjoyed. And with some of the other prompts, you'll see these books again, so we'll leave it there for now for my best books of the year. And so the next two questions are actually null and void for my reading year, and that is the best sequel you've read so far this year. Have not read any sequels. And then favorite reread. I just typically don't reread books very often, so this is one that I usually have to skip. The next question is genre you've been loving reading the most. And I feel like I've read a little bit of everything, but I have really been trying to dive deeper back into my sci-fi and fantasy bag. It lets me try to get back into my origin story of booktube and reading. So I really have been enjoying fantasy and sci-fi. I think I want to try and shift more to specifically sci-fi in the next couple months. I really just miss it. And there's always this element of sci-fi that has you reflecting on life, whether it's good or bad. But I do really enjoy that genre, so trying to get back into it. And it's been proving out pretty well for me so far this year. Next up is new release you haven't read yet but want to. I have 3 books for this, if I can find them in my pile. First up is Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane. I don't know if you can consider this a new release, but I'm considering a new release anything that has come out this year. And Alison Cochrane is probably one of my favorite romance authors. I've given Kiss Her Once for Me 5 stars, which was in my top 10 books of the year last year. All of her romances that I've read so far have been queer, and this one is about 2 women going on a road trip, and I believe they kind of just strengthen their connection while they're on a road trip. One of the reasons that I really like her writing is because she does a really good job of integrating in friendships into the relationships. And so I'm interested to see if that plays into this book or not, but definitely want to get into this very soon. And then we have One of Our Kind by Nicola Yoon. And so Nicola Yoon usually writes YA, but this is her first adult novel, I believe, and it's pitched as Get Out meets The Step for Wives. So I'm interested to see if like the emotion that she usually puts in her YA books is able to be transferred, one, into an adult book, two, into a thriller. It's not a very long book, so again, hoping to get to that soon. And then the last book that I want to get to is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I do own this book via audio, but I don't have a physical copy. And Riley Sager, you know who he is. I like his stuff because it usually ends up being very ridiculous, and sometimes in thrillers you need the ridiculousness to be shocked. So I'm really looking forward to this one. And I believe this book is about a man who experienced his best friend going missing when they were younger. Someone had like sliced open their tent when they were sleeping in the backyard. And he revisits the house that this happened 30 years later, and he kind of sees some weird stuff still going on in the neighborhood. And next up is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And so the book I'm choosing for this is I Was a Teenage Slasher. Stephen Graham Jones is one of my favorite horror authors, and probably just one of my favorite authors in general. But when it comes to horror, Stephen Graham Jones really just knows how to make you sick, okay? He knows how to scare you and terrify you in the most visceral way without being so overt about it sometimes. Like, it's a horrified feeling that kind of just like creeps into your skin a little bit, and that just has you staring up at the ceiling at night like, what the heck did I just read? But you know, I like that scary feeling sometimes. So I'm excited to see what this one is like. I think this is one that a lot of people are excited about because I know that it also kind of has like a retro feeling to it. And ooh, next up is Biggest Disappointment. And I feel like some of you guys are gonna come for me on this one, but it's The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. And so I read this as part of my Reading BookTube Favorite Books of the Year video, and I'm still confused why this was on so many of y'all's lists. Because when it comes to romance, this one was lacking in a lot of areas. I'm just gonna say it. You know, this had a little bit of magical realism intertwined into it, but I feel like it wasn't done in a way that made me feel anything special. I feel like the connection between the two characters was really rushed, and those conversations were also just very surface level. But after those surface level conversations, they were just magically in love with each other. Yeah, very disappointed in this just because I think it was hyped up so much. I think I ended up giving this like a 2.75, 2.5. Ooh, and then we have Biggest Surprise, and I'm definitely choosing Sociopath. This book I kind of just picked up on a whim. It came through my Libro FM influencer selections, and you know, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick it up, see what it's about. And this is a memoir about a woman who was diagnosed as a sociopath, but it's interesting because she talks about her life growing up, knowing that she was a little different, even as a child. We get to learn about some of her thoughts, some of her impulses. We learn about how she tried to cope and how she tried to like mask some of this as she was growing up. We also learn about like in adulthood, what it was like to get that diagnosis, what it was like to work through that with other people, how she's helping other people that are also sociopaths, and how it's like to form relationships with people when you have a hard time having similar emotions to them. And I think this book is a good one to read if you like true crime at all, or you're just interested in the human brain and how it works. I think this book was a book that I was searching for a long time, but didn't know that I was looking for. I feel like when I watch true crime and stuff, it's usually because I'm interested in how someone made the decisions that they made, how their brain is set up for them to be making those decisions. But usually that's not covered in true crime, right? It's usually just like the glorification of a serial killer or a psychopath or something. But I feel like this book really kind of humanized people who have sociopathy but aren't killers, and I just really enjoyed the perspective that this author gave. Then we have favorite new author debut or new to me, and I feel like this question always exposes me a little bit because I always pick an author that is like not new to anybody ever, but I just haven't read anything by them. And so this year I'm picking Brandon Sanderson. Even saying that just sounds really ridiculous. I feel like Brandon Sanderson was always an author that I was going to enjoy. I just didn't know where to get started in his books. So when Tress of the Emerald Sea popped up on a lot of people's 2023 favorites of the year list, I was happy that I got the opportunity to pick something up and something that was outside of some of his bigger series and that I could kind of read as like a standalone. And I did really enjoy this. I will say that at the beginning, it was hard for me to grasp the voice of the writing, but then when I picked up the audiobook, I really started to get where the characters were coming from. I was starting to understand their humor a lot better. So I have bought another Brandon Sanderson book since I've read this because I'm just interested to see if his other books have the same tone, the same type of humor, or just like how his world building is different in some of his more like renowned series. Yeah, I'm glad that I finally got to Brandon Sanderson, and so don't judge me for just getting to him in 2024. And then we have newest favorite character. I told you guys that Rage of Dragons was gonna make another appearance. And so one of my new favorite characters is Tao. He is the protagonist in this book. And I really like Tao because I feel like he is a protagonist that actually had to work to become special, right? I feel like a lot of protagonists we read in fantasy books, there's something that they were either born with, there's something about their circumstance, or an experience that they've had that makes them special. But you get to see the blood, sweat, and tears Tao puts into his craft, puts into him reaching his goals. And it was just really satisfying to watch. But Tao literally is one of the few protagonists in fantasy books that I like don't hate. Usually I just feel like they just don't have a personality. They don't really do much. Usually the side characters are the ones that are progressing the story forward. But Tao, I like him. Up next is a book that made you cry. Again, I said you guys were gonna see this book again, Monstrilio. So I'm actually not a big crier, at least when it comes to books, right? So I always try to pick a book that was the closest to having me cry, and that was definitely Monstrilio. But I feel like this book really did make me reflect on grief. I think in this book too, there's this sense of like humanity that is talked about in a different way, I think, because the main character in here, he is actually like a monster, hence Monstrilio, or he's like a creature. And I think people are forgetting that he may have feelings and that he felt his own sense of grief during this entire story that was just like really touching. And so with everybody in this story experiencing grief in a different way, it definitely hit me in the feels a little bit. Again, for a horror book, for one of the main things for me to be talking about is grief, it's actually kind of crazy, right? But don't get me wrong, this book still grossed me out a bit and it still horrified me a bit, but the grief aspect of it was definitely surprising. A book that made you happy. So I actually have two books that may surprise people. The first one is Save the Cat. It's actually a book about screenwriting, and trust me, I'm not quitting my day job to become a screenwriter, but we actually read this as part of a book club at work, and it really just talked about like storytelling in general, and it was really fascinating because even though it's about screenwriting, I was able to kind of translate it into books. I was able to then kind of recognize other patterns that I see when I watch TV, when I watch movies, and it just really made me happy because one, got to learn a little bit of behind the scenes of movie making, of screenwriting, and I feel like now I look like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Anytime I watch a movie, I'm like, that's that thing that they were talking about in Save the Cat. I see it. The second book that made me happy is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is a thriller about women who go to a writing retreat, but people start dying and you're just like, whoa, what's happening? And so you might be like, why does that make you happy? It's because the ending of this book was absolutely freaking ridiculous. So much to the point that it actually made me like chuckle a little bit, but that's why I loved the book so much. It was so unhinged. It reminded me of a Law & Order SVU episode, and I just really got a kick out of it. So I'm glad I picked it up, and I would definitely be reading from Julia Bartz in the future. I just love when thriller books thrill me, and so that's why it's making me happy. Then we have the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year, and that is Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. I did some book shopping for my birthday, and I saw this just sitting there, and it's just like all the detail and the intricacies that are within this book are just beautiful, and it just kind of gives this like dark academia vibe. And so, you know, I picked it up, read the inside flap, and I was also like, ooh, this sounds good. And I started it, didn't finish it. Again, let's just not talk about how my reading year has been going. And I didn't finish it not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because my audiobook came off hold from the library, and it's another like 10 weeks until I can get it. And this is one of those books that I just feel like is a lot more enjoyable listening to it. It's about this like secret society or school for people who want to murder their employers, the best way to do it, how to do it without getting caught. And so there's a lot of humor actually interjected through this book that I wasn't expecting. The question wasn't about the contents of the book, it was about the outside. Beautiful. Picasso. All right, so my memory card ran out of storage, so there may be a little bit of an angle shift, but we have 3 questions left, and the next one is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And you know, that question is definitely boundless for me, considering how my reading year has gone, but I'm gonna narrow it down to 3 books. The first one is Tender is the Flesh. This has been on my TBR for a really long time. Anytime someone reads it and mentions it in a video on Bookstagram, they always have such interesting things to say about it. I know this is horror. I know that it kind of talks about if humans were bred kind of like animals are for consumption. So I know that I have to have a strong stomach to read this, but it is fairly short, and I feel like it's almost just like a staple in the book community now. And so I just want to finally get to it in 2024. And then we have Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. The premise of this just sounds so interesting to me. Having a family and everybody's a murderer. Come on. Come on. And then last up we have Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. And so I've read one Emily St. John Mandel book before, and that was Station 11. I gave it 4 stars. The book was a little slow for me, but I loved the concept of the book. I loved some of the themes of the book as well. I just read the inside flap of this, and this also follows a plague similar to Station 11. So I'm hoping that this one, you know, moves a little quicker, but we'll see. I'm still very excited to get into it, and it's just one that I've just been intrigued to pick up for a while. Then we have favorite video or post you've done so far this year. Just like I was embarrassed about how's your reading going so far this year, I'm also embarrassed about the lack of content I've been putting out. That embarrassment is really just like an internal thing because I've just been like so busy, which is really just an excuse. I just haven't been wanting to pick up the camera. And so there's a lot of ideas I have that I am excited about filming, but I think the only one that I would say was my favorite so far is probably the one that I keep mentioning here, which is reading BookTube's favorite books of the year. Just because I feel like that helps me get more grounded into what everybody's talking about on BookTube, seeing what everybody's enjoying, because sometimes I can slack a little bit to see what everybody else is talking about, and I'll just do my own thing. I also feel like you guys have really good recommendations all of the time. I always find at least one book in that video that I love, that I give 5 stars. That's always definitely one of my favorites to film every year, and this year was no different. And then the last question, and I love this question, is favorite book community members. I don't know if just today's the magic number is 3, but I also have 3 people to mention here. First one is Joyce. Her energy and her vibe is just so positive. She has that energy that just feels infectious. You know, you can't help but watch her videos and smile. I also feel like she's just a very realistic reader. Like, she has a lot going on in her life, but she still finds time to read. She finds time to find joy in reading, and I just really love her videos. I think her editing style is also phenomenal. And then I also have Shaughnessy. So I think I actually found Joyce through Shaughnessy, because Shaughnessy has done a few videos of like Black creators in the booktube space, and she finds people that sometimes just like the algorithm doesn't give you. But she's also a person, her energy unmatched, her positivity unmatched, and you can just tell that she loves to put out content, that she loves to read. And I still enjoy watching her videos, even though most of the time she's just reading romance, and I'm not like a huge romance reader. You know, there's just some creators out there that you just watch when you just need a breath of fresh air, you know. And then last up is Tori. I've followed Tori for probably a couple years now. She is like the OG like sci-fi girly for me. Anytime that I'm like, ooh, I need something sci-fi, which I told you guys I'm trying to get more into this year, I go to Tori's channel. She's also just one of those people that is able to find books that I just don't hear about anywhere else. And when I feel like she loves a book, it is hard to not want to immediately put it on your TBR. Her like joy and her excitement about the books is just really infectious. So definitely, if you're into sci-fi and fantasy, definitely go check Tori out. And so I love that that was the last question to wrap that up on. Thank you if you made it to the end of this video. Thank you if you have been someone who subscribed, you know, just keeps hanging on with me. I see you, I love you, I appreciate you. I'm gonna try to do better, okay? I'm gonna try to hold up my end of this relationship. And so if you made it to the end of this video, leave a sun emoji, because it's the middle of summer and it is hot in Texas right now. And let me know down below who's your favorite creator that you have been watching this year. And I will see you in the next one, my little tater tots. Bye.